Welcome back to the beautiful Horseshoe in Columbus, Ohio. The 40-year vet Tim May is back from Bloomington. So is Andy Backstrom. So is Spencer Holbrook. That's me. It is the Monday after Ohio State 23, Indiana 3. An up and down, rocky, clunky effort by the Buckeyes, but a win is a win on the road in the Big Ten, and the Buckeyes will take it. We've done the rewatch, we've done the deep dives, we've done the coverage. In the immediate aftermath of 23-3 Ohio State over Indiana, the Buckeyes 1-0 in the Big Ten. Tim, now that you've had a little bit of time to let that win marinate, if you will, how you cooking this steak?
Well, it's Labor Day and we're working, so that tells you something about how we're cooking. Number one. Number two, maybe you shouldn't go with me first, because I'm going to tell you something. I saw more possibilities coming out of that game for Kyle McCord and the offense than I did negatives, because, if you don't get it done, you don't get it done. But there were 3 touchdowns that were left on the table in that game.
Yes.
And in the passing game, and I could delineate them for you, but a couple of them are pretty obvious. But then that one time when they lined up, as we talked about after the game on Saturday, when they had 8-man line with Marvin Harrison Jr. split wide left in a running back, and they don't even. C.J. Stroud would have immediately had an automatic where he gets to throw the ball to the best receiver in the country one-on-one against a defender who, when the play started, he went right around. Instead, they just ran the play, and I think they ended up kicking a field goal on that possession, if I'm not mistaken, because they never scored going to the north with a touchdown. Those are the kind of things that jump out at me. Is number one, Kyle McCord had a short cord for this game, a leash, whatever you want to call it. Run the play we called, because we saw another one when Andy's sitting there with me, where Marvin Harrison Jr. early in the game broke straight up the seam, wide open. The safety jumped the guy to the outside, and I'm going, that's an automatic read for a quarterback. You see a safety go like that, and the number one receiver in the country is running down the seam all by himself. Marvin Harrison Jr. touchdown. And of course we saw Marvin Harrison Jr. not able to hold that, catch that pass at the goal line on an outcut, which I think they settled for a field goal there. So those are 3 touchdowns right off the bat that would have really flipped this game in the realm of public opinion and elsewhere.
One of the things, Andy, that stuck out to me about this game was Kyle McCord's debut. Again, I don't count the Akron game. That was a spot start as a true freshman.
He played well.
He did
pretty well.
He did, but he's such a different player.
Yeah.
And so it's almost hard to even count that. So this, I do view this as his true Ohio State debut as a starter.
Yeah.
That felt more like mop-up duty even from the jump, because they were playing Akron.
Yeah.
But this was the actual debut, and one of the things that I noticed, it's one of the weirdest debuts I've ever seen for a quarterback, because what do you think of when you think of first-time starter? You think, okay, get him in a rhythm with quick passes and set up downfield. Get the running game going, set up downfield. No. He looked uncomfortable with the short passes. He looked uncomfortable in the running game. He looked very comfortable throwing the ball down the field. And I think as he started to complete things down the field, the offense opened up for him, and he started to settle in. That was my observation. What is your take there? Because I just thought that when Ohio State started to open up the playbook a little more and let him throw the ball down the field, he looked good.
Yeah, for the most part. I think that was my initial takeaway. Looking back at the numbers, it's a little bit different. I think he was 3 of 13 on throws, 10 or more yards down the field, but that's a little bit misleading, right? Because you look back at some of those throws, and they were on the money, and they just weren't caught. The one on the post to Julian Fleming across the middle of the field, that probably could have been caught by the wide receiver
ball.
there.
Yeah.
There was another throw to Carnell Tate towards the end zone that was dropped. There was a few other ones where he put it where it was supposed to be put, and it just wasn't caught. So again, that number is a little bit misconstrued. But I do think that, yes, he did look more comfortable, especially in the second half. I do think that the arm talent was definitely on display. What I do think that he needs to get better at is the reads. Because as Tim mentioned, it felt like it was one read and then a little bit of panic, especially on that interception, because Trip Trainum trips, and then after that, he kind of went into this panic mode where he threw to Cade Stover in the middle of the field, and there was not just one, but 2 Indiana defenders there.
That was a major error.
Yeah, so I think that the reads and then the timing are things that he needs to get down more, because again, with the Marvin Harrison Jr. could-be touchdown there near the goal line, it was low and behind. And I think what you want to see from Kyle going forward is working on those two things, making the right read after the first one isn't there, and then having better timing and precision. But arm talent certainly there. I would say my major takeaway watching this game back is they need to do a better job getting Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball. There's really no excuse for them to have 2 catches each. I think that they need to be way more creative to get them the ball, whatever it takes.
It's almost like they anticipated Indiana taking, especially Marvin Harrison Jr. away, and just called plays. And I'm just going, that's where I disagreed. If that in fact was in the game plan, I disagree with that big time. But the other problem they had was Indiana did a great job of shooting their linebackers. Okay, that number 44 had a hell of a game. I'm trying to struggle recalling his name.
Baron Casey.
Yes. And then number 1, that transfer from Western Michigan, the defensive end, Andre Carter, he blew up several plays just with great effort. And especially, I think it was a 4th down play where he came off the edge, unblocked, because Ohio State ran basically a zone read option right there. But it wasn't really a zone read because it was really a crack block. But I don't remember. It might have been Cade Stover. I don't remember who was. Just missed him in the backfield. That play might have gained 10 yards before anybody touched whoever the running back was there. I think it might have been Mayan Williams. But the problem, those are the kind of plays just that blow up drives. You know what I mean? That all of a sudden, boom. Jaden Fielding's in there trying another field goal. And but that 4th down play, when they went for it, and that was the 4th down play when they went for it, when I thought they should have kicked the field goal, remember?
Yeah.
And they get nothing from that. So there was a lot of blame to go around on the offense. It wasn't Kyle McCord necessarily related, although he's the guy that's supposed to fix it no matter what.
Yeah, well, I want to be very clear. We're not carrying water for Kyle McCord. I read the comments on YouTube because it's part of my job. We're not carrying water for Kyle McCord. I think the thing that I will say about what Kyle McCord did well and didn't do well, everything that he didn't do well, I feel is correctable. There were a lot of things that I think are very correctable. Yeah. And if you have a quarterback who's making mistakes that aren't really as correctable as they can, like, if there's mistakes that it's just like, this is who he is as a player, that's an issue. If you have mistakes that, like, okay, the timing's off with Marvin Harrison Jr. on the corner out in the end zone, he should have probably thrown a couple of better balls across the middle. He can't be thrown across his body. He's got to still be able to find chip training even though he fell down. Those things are correctable.
Because he got back up.
He didn't go to his third read because he got a little happy feet. Okay, well, the offensive line is correctable to an extent. I think they a little bit are what they are going to be this year. But also I think that they're going to get better. Everything Kyle did on Saturday, a lot of that are correctable mistakes. And you've got to feel good if you're Ryan Day, knowing that in start 1, you had a guy throw for 239 yards who looked comfortable, 10 of 16 in the second half, and who made some mistakes that you look back on and you say, okay, like this is, the bones are good here. We can work with this. And now you've got 2 weeks to iron things out because Youngstown State not going to present much of a challenge in this building behind me, and Western Kentucky, I don't think that defense is going to present many issues either. Those are confidence builders.
But that may end up being a scoring match.
Well, but I just think that, like, those are good confidence builders for a young quarterback.
Yeah.
And he still is young. His passing numbers, he doesn't have that many attempts in his career as a third-year player. So, like, I just think everything is correctable, and he's got 2 confidence games coming up to stack onto his short resume to be able to go into the Notre Dame game with a lot of confidence that he can pilot this offense and he can look good in this offense.
Now let's get to the big elephant question in the room. Is this quarterback race over? Because, what we talked about before the game last week was I wasn't surprised that Kyle McCord played most of this game because the major concern for Ryan Day was going to Indiana and getting a victory, not about sorting out the quarterback question, if in fact there still is one. What is your take on that? I don't mean to jump into you and ask you those questions, but what is your take on whether this quarterback derby is over?
I don't understand how this was handled at all because I think you're gonna play with Kyle McCord the whole game, which they end up doing anyway. They should have just said that rather than trying to create the narrative that both were going to play meaningful snaps, because you saw the plan was to get Devin Brown in on the 3rd drive. Well, Kyle McCord played the 3rd drive, and that's when the interception happened. Then they brought Devin Brown in, which I would have liked to see Kyle McCord after that drive.
Get back on the bike.
Yeah, and try to bounce back from that. You got to learn from the mistakes. And Ryan Day talked about playing through adversity. And I guess to a certain extent, he still had to do that. But then when Devin Brown comes in, they don't even let him throw a pass. He doesn't throw a pass until garbage time.
Yeah.
So we didn't get any data.
Quarterback sweep, quarterback power.
On third down. And he had no chance. I think Audrey Carter was already all over him by the time he got the ball. So we didn't learn anything about Devin Brown in this game. We got no data on that. And I think that it just felt sloppy to me, the way it was managed.
Well, the game didn't go quite according to hope.
Right, but even on the third drive, it wasn't out of whack yet. They had scored a touchdown on the first drive. They went 3 and out on the second. It's the third drive. They could have easily put Devin Brown in, but they didn't. And then by the time it was the fourth drive, you were already starting to feel uneasy because the interception happened on the third drive.
Yeah.
Well, so there was and they were supposed to play him in the 5th or 6th series as well. They didn't do that. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm coming away from that game thinking Kyle McCord's the starter. I guess we're going to see Devin Brown in these next 2 games, but it just kind of feels like a little bit confusing to me why this was peddled the way it was. I get that you want Devin Brown to stick around. I get that you want him to be happy. But it just is confusing the way it was all framed to me.
Does Ohio State trust Devin Brown? Because you're in a tight game in the first half. Fourth drive he comes in, doesn't attempt to pass. Looked pretty safe to me. And Ryan Day in this quarterback competition has talked about 2 things. Routine plays being routine and taking care of the football. He doesn't say these things on accident. He really doesn't.
No, he does
and
not.
And from what I've seen in open practices in spring and in training camp, there have been times where 33 has been a little loose with the football. I'm not saying he's a turnover machine. That's not at all what I'm saying. And the explosive plays, when they occur, are explosive. They are good. But you have to take care of the football. And remember last year, Ryan Day, hey Ryan, does Dallin Hayden have a fumbling problem? No. But we got to make sure that running backs who are on the field for us in big games take care of the football. Okay, well, does that mean that he does fumble in practice? I don't know, but that was what we had to contend with. Yeah. Okay, hey Ryan, you want to play both of these quarterbacks. What's the biggest thing? They have to make the routine plays routine, and they have to take care of the football. Kyle's doing that consistently right now. Okay, well, what about Devin? He looks good. Okay, well, does he turn the ball over then a little too much for you? Like, those are questions we have to start asking, because if he did trust Devin Brown more, I don't think we would have seen, even in a tight game, him only play Devin Brown 3 snaps, non-garbage time. And hold on a second, and only throw 0 passes, because that was very confusing to me. But maybe we should have seen that coming based on what we had heard from Ryan Day the last couple of weeks.
He threw a pass to Dallin Hayden, didn't he?
He threw 3 passes total, but they were all
in garbage
after the game was over.
Yeah.
What really made it confusing was he enters the game after the Kyle McCord interception, and so then you're asking yourself, was this planned, or was this basically getting Kyle McCord out because he had just made a huge mistake?
Yes.
And then you find out you don't even know, because Kyle McCord went in the next possession. So
well, to be fair, Tim, the next possession was a 2-minute drill at the end of the half.
So I don't care. But I mean, I'm just saying he went in and ran 3 plays and came back out, and then you didn't see him again until the end of the 4th quarter. So my point is, like Andy's talking about, the plan. What was the plan? But the plan got blown up as soon as Indiana was sort of still making it a game.
Yeah.
Yet they still put him in the game for that 4th possession after an interception throw by the starter. So it's kind of confusing the way that was handled. I don't think there was ever a plan to have Devin Brown play extensively in this game because of what I just said. The idea was you got to go to Indiana, Big Ten opponent, and win the game.
Yeah.
Youngstown State, you're going to have chances to play both of these guys. That's when we're going to find out if it's still a competition.
Maybe not. What isn't a competition?
For starter.
What isn't a competition right now is the starting 5 on the offensive line. Andy,
maybe that should be.
The advanced grades are in. It was not pretty for this Ohio State offensive line. Nobody expected it to be perfect. Even Justin Fry, I would assume, did not expect it to be perfect. With that being said, though, buddy, a couple issues there. Indiana schemed him up pretty well, I will say. I'll give a lot of credit to Matt Guerrieri, to Tom Allen, shooting those gaps with linebackers, knowing that there's a first-time center, knowing there's 2 first-time tackles. But there's some issues that need worked out.
Well, yeah, leading up to this game, kind of the discussion was communication, because you're playing on the road, you're playing a Big Ten opponent, and you got a first-time center, Carson Hinsman. And normally the center's the one communicating that, picking up signals, saying, hey, this linebacker's coming, picking him up, calling it out, someone picks that guy up, right? That didn't happen a lot on Saturday. That's why you saw those linebackers, those defensive backs, shooting through and making tackles behind the line of scrimmage and kind of stunting that Ohio State run game, especially in between the tackles, because most of the rushing yards actually came on the outside because they had to bounce outside because Indiana was just crashing in the middle of the trenches. So I think, people talked about Josh Simmons and they were complaining about his performance. Yes, he wasn't great, but the guards, Donovan Jackson and Matt Jones, were not very good on Saturday. And these are the 2 returners that everyone talked about as the anchors of this offensive line. I think it's also on them to communicate and help Carson Hinsman out as a first-time center. So I don't think the blame goes to one person. I think this was as a collective unit. They really need to do better in week 2.
Indiana did a great job, though, of engaging the 5 offensive linemen and still shooting linebackers. I mean, they did a pretty good job. I mean, you can only block one guy at a time unless you're Orlando Pace. You understand what I'm saying there? I mean, they did a pretty good job. And they also, I'm not going to call it luck because a lot of things are more pluck than luck, but they guessed right quite a few times when they shot those linebackers, because shooting linebackers is not the way to routinely stop a running game. But their main thing there was they expected Ohio State to come in running because of a new quarterback. So the reason you shoot linebackers is because if they don't run the ball, now you're in a first-time starting quarterback's face. And I thought that worked pretty well. I thought the pass pro, for the most part, was pretty good when it was just pure throwing the ball. And
so, when it wasn't, Tim.
But see, I know, but that, like we just talked about a while ago, Spence, it only takes one play a drive to blow up a drive sometimes. And that's, Indiana seemed to get that play a lot.
Yeah.
And which was not necessarily luck, but definitely good planning on their part, and a little bit of a little bit of lucking out to be in the right place at the right time.
And when the pass pro wasn't good, Tim, Kyle McCord looked pretty okay on the run.
Dude,
he had a couple throws that I thought were decent on the run. One in particular, on the rewatch, I think it was in the second quarter. There was a nice throw by him on the run. I will say this.
This wasn't like watching those 2 quarterbacks we saw on, what was that, Thursday night?
We don't compare Ohio State to Indiana or any other team in the Big Ten other than 2. Michigan in the first half against East Carolina really struggled to run the football. Penn State in the first half against West Virginia really struggled to run the football. There were times where Alabama didn't run the football particularly well, even against Middle Tennessee. There were times against whoever they played, whoever they smacked around, where Georgia looked bad running the football. It's week 1. I'm not giving a complete pass to this offensive line. I see things that absolutely have to be corrected in the next 2 weeks before they head to South Bend. But if you want to compare Ohio State to who they should be compared to, there were 4 other teams, just off the top of my head, that are immediate contenders that Ohio State has to have an eye on, that also struggled to run the football at times in week 1. And so now Ohio State has to determine if what they see against Youngstown State, where they'll likely be able to push them around, and what they see against a Western Kentucky defense that hasn't played defense in decades, is your run game fixed? Is your offensive line fixed? Or are you playing inferior competition?
That's the point. You don't know.
It can be a little of both, but you have to be able to find things out about your line, and I thought you could have found some stuff out about the line against Indiana, but the way that Indiana came at them, but also the way that week 1 just kind of happens with new offensive linemen, I don't know if we have a good grasp of this offensive line just yet, Andy.
Yeah, I would say the most alarming thing to me was the fact that they were 2 of 12 on 3rd down.
Yes.
And as of last night, they were last in the Big Ten of week 1 teams in 3rd down conversion rate. And I think when you look at this team last year, I think they were 27th in that category nationally. And that's just one thing that I bet you Ryan Day, Brian Hartline, everyone on that offensive staff is not content with right now. Because if you're going 2 of 12 on 3rd down, and keep in mind, of those 12 3rd downs, 7 of them were 4 yards or fewer to gain. And they were 1 of 7 in those situations. And sometimes it was running the ball and not getting the first down. Sometimes it was throwing the ball and not converting either. And I think when you're the offense, that's the thing that worries me going into the Notre Dame game at the end of the month. They're not going to really be tested in that regard as much against Western Kentucky and Youngstown State. And that's why, when Ryan Day says you don't want to be reckless, you want to win the game, I completely agree. You want to get out of week 1 with a win. The problem is that they're not going to need to be reckless these next 2 weeks. And then you're going into Notre Dame where you're probably going to have to take more chances. And that's going to be the first time really all month, first time really all season where you're taking chances. And I guess you're just hoping that you're ready at that point, but they certainly didn't look ready to convert and execute the way they need to, not only on third down, but in the red zone.
First time in a lot of guys' career that they'll have to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Kyle McCord, the 2 tackles, the center, even a couple of these running backs who haven't really been in that kind of a spotlight, before. Like, that's big for this offense to know what they've got going into Notre Dame, and I'm not sure if they will. I do know one thing about this Ohio State team as we pivot here on the Monday after Ohio State 23, Indiana 3. Tim, that defense, man, Indiana's offense is terrible, truly bad.
Or is it?
It is. They'll probably finish 13th in the Big Ten this year in total offense. I think everyone can piece together who will be 14th after yesterday.
If they get their quarterback back in October, they might be a little bit better, but go ahead.
The defense, though, the Ohio State defense, I said this on the Morning Juice, 97.1 The Fan this morning. I appreciate those guys having me on. The thing about this defense that I was super encouraged by is it's week 1, and a team comes out and runs a glorified triple option against you.
Yeah.
And at all times, I would say 90% of those triple option plays, Ohio State was in the right place at the right time, and it was gap sound. There were a couple plays, maybe a couple guys were out of position, but for the most part, even against bad offenses, there's something to be said for a defense being gap sound in their assignments, and knowing where to be, even when an offense throws a wrinkle at you that you might not have seen coming.
No, the Ohio State defense shouldn't get kudos. Yeah, it was Indiana. Yeah, they had a couple of quarterbacks, who would not have been in the competition, I don't think, for the starting job at Ohio State this year. But with that said, they came out and ran something Ohio State did not anticipate them running, which was the option. I mean, the speed option to the edge on the first play. And like I've said ad nauseum now on different shows I've been on, the way not just Josh Proctor jumped it, but Sonny Styles also.
Yeah,
the way they blew that up, like they've been practicing against it all preseason camp, which they may have. I'm sure they practiced against speed option kind of things, because you try to throw as much out there as you can in preseason camp, different looks, etc. But the way they jumped it and routinely jumped it throughout the game was a sign of a matured defense, a defense that paid its dues last year. And really, when you look back on last year, well, I won't get into all that. Last year's last year. But you saw some veterans playing out there, and I saw some guy with some asinine observation on Twitter that the defensive line looked slow. And I'm going, you're immediately adjusting to playing against a team that's running an option. Your defensive line has got to play its keys and then attack. That's what that's designed to do. It's not, and so you're going, every play you got to think, Indiana's about to run an option play here. You play your keys and then you attack the quarterback. I thought they did a damn good job against a deep. I mean, they gave up less than 100 yards rushing and less than 100 yards passing. What more do you want? And a field goal that doinked off the upright and went through. You don't see that every day, right?
It was almost a shutout.
But my point is, I was incredibly impressed with the way the defense quickly adjusted and got after it. You're always going to give up a play or 4 against another team that also practices and recruits toward Big Ten talent, etc. Yeah, I mean, Indiana has some good players. They just don't have,
1 to 85.
Busload of them.
It's not 1 to 85.
Right. But I mean, like we talked about, a couple of guys on defense you really like coming out of that game. A couple of guys on offense you really like too. But I thought the Ohio State defense, this was an A rating for the opener.
That's why.
Even though Denzel Burke didn't like it because they gave up 3 points.
This Ohio State defense, Andy, I thought pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. Again, massive caveat.
Yes.
because of Indiana. But man, there were some players out there.
The secondary didn't really get tested because, as we mentioned, Indiana doesn't really have a great quarterback situation right now. But when they were tested, they did a pretty good job. Denzel Burke only allowed 1 catch on 5 targets, had 2 pass breakups, which lived up to the hype he had this offseason as one of the most improved players in the Woody. I also thought that Davison Igbinosun, who played the most snaps of any corner, looked pretty good. He was targeted 6 times, only gave up 3 catches.
Him a lot in that game.
So I think that's noteworthy, the fact that he played 45 defensive snaps, which was at least 7 more than both Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock. Hancock was played the least of the top trio corners. So that's just something to monitor. And then safety position to take away, I think, as we mentioned, Sonny Styles, watching that back was someone who popped out for me.
On nearly every play.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was arguably the best run defender all game. And it was cool to see him play as much as he did because we've talked almost ad nauseum about how he needs to play and he needs to be on the field. He was, and he lived up to it. I will say, we didn't see any Jahad Carter. We saw a lot of Malik Hartford, especially in the second half. So that was not just buzz. He's certainly going to play. I wonder if Jahad Carter finds a way.
That availability list was interesting because you kind of wonder whether Jahad was held out for any kind of reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's been banged up a little bit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like if he was healthy, he probably would have played at least 10 snaps in that game.
But the way they talked about him, it was a 3-man rush, right?
Right.
I mean, and that's the guy you didn't see. I agree with everything you just said there. And I'm stammering because this man was calling it out in the press box. Where's Mike Hall? How come Mike Hall's not playing every down? And I understand his frustration because we were told, he was going to be the bulk. He's got to play the lion's share of the plays, right?
Lion's share of the plays.
Yeah.
Doesn't play
Well,
the first snap of the season.
Well, what does that
Sam.
mean when it's 93 degrees feel out on a I'm just going, I understand. They played a lot of guys on that defensive front.
Tim.
They rolled guys in and out.
He didn't play the first snap of the season.
I know.
In the record book now,
It was Tyleek and
Mike Hall.
Ty Hamilton in there.
in the record book now, Mike Hall did not start for Ohio State.
Okay.
How does that happen?
I don't know. But
I don't care if the 5 best offensive linemen in NFL history are out there and they're going to run the ball down your throat.
Yeah.
Mike Hall on the first play of the season must be on the field. That might be the thing. They could lose to Youngstown State and I would still be more baffled at the fact that Mike Hall didn't take the first snap against Indiana.
You start who you start. Go from there.
I was so amazed
But
to
I
see
wouldn't
that
let that
11.
ruin my day. I mean, I wouldn't have let that ruin my chicken. What was that thing in the chicken cacciatore or whatever
It was
that
bad.
was?
That's what it was.
Yeah, in the press box. I wouldn't let that ruin my meal, personally. And then Mike Hall did have one memorable play in there, but so did Hero Canoe.
Yeah.
Or Hero, how do you pronounce? Is it Hero Canoe or is it Hero Canoe?
It's Canoe.
Okay. So it just sounds cool no matter what. Hero and Canoe. But I wouldn't let that ruin my day. I thought they got really pretty decent play out of their defensive line in this
I
game.
agree.
Kenyatta Jackson got in the game, didn't really blow up anything like we thought he would, but they weren't running classic pass plays.
There was no obvious passing downs
Correct.
for these defensive ends to pin their ears back and be cut loose.
Correct.
So
Even when Indiana was way behind. And by the way, I remind people, Ohio State won by basically 3 touchdowns in this game, not 5 points.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was 8 defensive linemen that played 10 or more snaps. So, I mean, I know we talk a lot about the rotation, but it was cool to see Hero Canoe get that sack. Jaden McKenzie had a great moment that wasn't actually counted as a sack, but it felt like a sack.
Yes.
From behind, taking down Brendan Sorsby, one of Indiana's quarterbacks. It was nice to see a little bit of Tywone Malone. He only played a few snaps, but good to see him on the field for Ohio State. We saw a lot of Tyleek Williams. With the Mike Hall discussion, I agree that there's times where he should be on the field. I don't totally understand the first play of the game not being on the field.
Yeah.
But I will say he's going to play like 30 snaps. So you got to pick your spots. Like he can't play 50 plus. Like that's just not
Correct.
the point of those guys up front in the interior for the defensive line.
Yeah.
So I do think that we're just going to have to, I know we're all keeping that in mind, but as long as he's playing near 30 snaps and he's in at the right times, I'm cool with that rotation.
I'm okay with it, Andy. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm okay with it against Indiana, against Youngstown State. I don't even want him playing that much against Youngstown State. Get up 21-0 and put everyone in bubble wrap. I'm okay with it against Western Kentucky.
Really?
When you go
Austin Reed, last year's leading passer, they're going to come in here throwing the ball, getting off the bus.
Tim, they cannot compete with Ohio State.
I'm just saying, they're going to come in here throwing the ball, getting off the bus. I just like
then we'll
that.
talk about that next week. But
Okay.
against
I want a pass rush in that one.
against Notre Dame, that rotation can't happen. You can't have 8 guys. And Mike Hall is going to have to play more because Sam Hartman's going to throw the ball, and Mike Hall has to be disruptive. And
Right.
so, we can be okay with it for now. I'm just, if it's continue, and I guess maybe I'm being a little too harsh for week 1 because it was Indiana. You had a 20-point lead there. You had a 10-point lead that felt like 30 because the way Indiana was moving the ball. Maybe it's right to get all those guys in there. But that can't be a precursor for what's coming.
Yeah.
It has to be the exception, not the rule, against better competition. Mike Hall's going to have to play more. And I get that 30 snaps is probably a good, healthy amount for him. He's 300 pounds. It's not easy to play more than that, 300 pounds. But also, he's the kind of guy that has to be in big games.
I agree. He needs to be in big games, but I like that rotation of the defensive front. I like the idea of having fresh guys in there a lot. And for example, I thought Caden Curry played pretty well.
Yes.
In that game. I thought Jack Sawyer did too, and I thought for what he was asked to do, JT Tuimoloau did also. So, the linebackers flowed to the ball. Steele Chambers was in on a lot of hits. So was Tommy Eichenberg. That's my summation of the defense. I thought they rocked and rolled and got after it.
Right before we get out of here, fellas, on the morning after, or the Monday after, it's not the morning after, it's 2 mornings after. What an idiot I am. Tim, Andy, rapid fire. I'm going to ask each of you an offensive player that stuck out and a defensive player that stuck out. We won't do special teams because I think Jaden Fielding kind of took that
Just
with
one?
3 field goals. Yes, just one guy. Again, rapid fire.
Because I got 2.
Just 2 guys, real quick. I mean, very quick.
Chip
Rapid fire.
Trainum and Cade Stover.
Give me a moment there. I was going to say Chip because we all want to say Chip. I would say Julian Fleming offensively, and then we're doing defense.
Yeah, sure.
All right, we'll go defense. Sonny Styles.
Davis Enigbenosin.
There you go.
As you said, he wasn't targeted very much, or how much he was targeted, but he almost got kicked out for targeting at the beginning of the game. And some people still think he did. Where we were sitting in the press box, you couldn't see the replays.
No.
But I couldn't. But I thought for his first game as a Buckeye, I thought Davis Enigbenosin played extremely well.
I am going to go, just because I had to go last, so not really many options there. I will go Julian Fleming. He was my offensive player of the game, and I came away impressed. I wouldn't give him the offensive player of the game honors. That'd probably go to Cade Stover. But if I had to pick one that you guys didn't mention, I thought Joe Royer played well. And G. Scott, too. Those tight ends, man, I think they can really use those guys.
There was a guy in this game that scored 2 touchdowns, and none of us named him. And
Well.
I thought he, when he was in there, Mayan Williams was quite effective.
Yeah.
He just didn't. He should be on your Mike Hall list. I mean, why wasn't he in there more often? I mean, what's the answer there, Spence?
He's the garbage man, Tim.
I don't know if he's a garbage man. I think he delivered the fresh goods with 2 touchdowns and fighting for both of them, running through tackles on both of them. I thought he was impressive. Travion Henderson, was in and out, and he got hit that one time and rocked, but he came back and rocked a defender a couple of possessions later. But I thought it was interesting because those are 3 quality running backs that Ohio State can throw at you.
We'll get into that this week. But I think Mayan Williams is officially the garbage man for me. He comes in, 1-2 yard situation, pounds it in, picks up the garbage, and converts it. And then defensively, let's see. I thought Cody Simon played well, giving some guys some flowers who just weren't mentioned that much on the show. And Lathan Ransom. I mean, Lathan Ransom, he's everywhere, guys. I think at this point, he's a little bit of one of the backbones of this defense, and I don't think it would be able to go without number 8. Out there, it was weird to see him in number 8, just because I'm so used to seeing him at number 12. But that's his prerogative to change his number, and so yeah, he's a big part of this defense, and I think he's going to be moving forward.
Sorry about that.
No problem, Tim. So we're all busy here. Speaking of moving forward, we are going to move over across the street to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday, hear from Ryan Day, maybe a couple others, as the Buckeyes prepare for a
Wait, let me
battle.
interrupt you. We actually have to go over a river from here to get to the Woody Hayes.
I'm not here for technicalities,
Okay.
Tim.
All right.
I'm not here for the technicalities. I'm just here to entertain.
Neither is the Russian army.
And inform. We're going to go across the street and I guess across the river. I guess we'll have to ford the river, Oregon Trail style, to get over there to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday for Ryan Day and a couple other Buckeyes, I would assume. The 40-year vet Tim May will be there. Andy Backstrom will be there. For now, it is the Monday after Ohio State 23, Indiana 3. Thanks for watching on your fine Labor Day. Enjoy your day off, folks, and we will see you in the Woody on Tuesday for more coverage from LettermenRow.com.